Hello, everyone, and welcome to our GP Strategies webinar. My name is Kayla Ross, Marketing Manager for GP Strategies, and I'm happy to be your host for today's event. If you've joined us before, we are very glad to have you back, and if this is your first time with us, well, a big welcome goes out to you. We have a great discussion planned today around design thinking. Keith is here to share ways to move from theory to application. Before we get started with the session, I do want to cover just a few housekeeping items. First, everyone's phone lines have been muted just to eliminate possible disruptions. Because we have a lot of great content to cover today in a short amount of time, if you do have a question during the presentation, we'll try to squeeze it in during an appropriate pause. But if we are running short on time, what we'll do is we'll have you submit them in the Q&A module. This can be found in the lower right-hand panel of WebEx, and we'll address them at the end of the session. I anticipate that we will have several questions come in, so if we do end up running short on time, I've also agreed to address these in a follow-up blog post, and this will be emailed to everyone on the call. We also encourage you to share the information that you received today with your colleagues and networks via social media. Please be sure to include the hashtag #GPWebinar or the handle @GPCorp so that we're able to follow your contribution to the conversation. And finally, the slides and recording of today's event will be emailed to you within the next 48 hours. And as always, they'll be available with all of our other great presentations on our webinar recordings page at gpstrategies.com. I would like to introduce you to today's presenter, Keith Keating. Get over to his bio slide. There we go. With a career spanning over 20 years in learning and development, Keith holds a master's degree in leadership and has experience in instructional design, leadership coaching, operations management, and process transformation. More recently, Keith has been leading GP Strategies clients on the development and execution of their global learning strategies. Regardless of the role, at the heart of everything Keith does centers around problem solving. He studied design at MIT Sloan School of Management and found design thinking was a perfect tool to add to his problem-solving toolkit. Since then, Keith has been utilizing design thinking to help clients tap into understanding and resolving unmet customer needs. So with that, I've got a 2-minute intro here. So Keith, I'm going to go ahead and change presenter rights over to you so you can share your screen.
Perfect. And let me know if you are able to see it and hear me okay.
You sound great, and we see your agenda.
Perfect. All right, let's get started. So thank you, Kayla. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad you're able to join me today discussing one of my favorite topics, which is design thinking. I believe it's such an incredibly valuable tool, but I find that many don't know how to leverage it. And so my goal today is to help move past the theory of design thinking and focus on the application. I want to help you uncover ideas on how you can leverage this tool as a problem solver. And so to set the stage, I want to start with a story that many of you may be familiar with. So the year is 2007, and BlackBerry is on top of the world. They own 50% of the world's smartphone market. I had a BlackBerry, and I'm sure many of you had a BlackBerry out there as well, at some point at least. But about 5 years after 2007, BlackBerry is on the verge of bankruptcy. So how does a company go from controlling 50% of the world's smartphone market to less than 1% in under 5 years? And the answer is simple. It's in their approach to how they handle their customers, and can be summarized in one quote from BlackBerry. "We believed we knew better what customers needed than they did." So BlackBerry heard their customers, they just didn't listen. When customers would say, "We want a better keyboard," BlackBerry would say, "Well, you might think you do, but you don't want your device to die at 2 p.m. Or customers would say, "We want to be able to browse the internet." And BlackBerry would say, "Well, you might think you do, but it's not actually possible. And if it was, it wouldn't load properly. So we're just going to continue focusing on what we know best." At the same time, a new competitor entered the market, Apple, which all of us are probably familiar with by now. In 2007, they launched their first iPhone, and within a matter of few years, toppled BlackBerry and became the new industry leader. And the rest is really history for BlackBerry. So what did Apple do that was so different than BlackBerry? And that too can be summed up in one quote. "We focus on people's needs and desires rather than only the needs of the business." So Apple, compared to BlackBerry, focuses on the people, the needs and desires of the people. And that is the core essence of design thinking. So what is design thinking? It's a process for creative problem solving. It's a methodology that asks us to focus on the people that we're solving the problems for, that leads to human-centered products, services, and internal processes. So design thinking helps to unlock the needs and the problems of our end users, our customers, our learners, even when they don't know what it is or they're not able to articulate it for themselves. So if there's anything that you take away from today, it's remembering that design thinking is a problem-solving methodology with a focus on people. So there are 5 stages of design thinking. The first is empathy, which is where we learn about our audience, our learners, our end users, our customers, our patients. We learn about the people, and that is the most important aspect of design thinking. After we learn about our audience, we then analyze and synthesize all of that data, and we turn it into problem statements to try and identify what challenges they're facing, what root causes exist so we can help them solve those problems. And once we define the problem statement, then of course we brainstorm and we create solutions to try and solve those problems. And then after we have our brainstorms, we come up with our list of ideas, then we move to prototype and we build out one or more of those ideas, but quickly. They're quick, low fidelity prototypes that we're building out. And then of course, once we have those, we want to go back and we want to test it with our users, our audience, to make sure that we heard them correctly, that this is actually solving their underlying issue, and we get their feedback. And more often than not, especially in design thinking, that first round isn't addressing the issue. And that's okay, because design thinking is an iterative process. In fact, when you look at this, it looks like it's linear, but the reality is it's not. Design thinking is a nonlinear iterative process where any of these phases can be happening at the same time or in different order. For me, personally, I like to focus on the empathy phase because I think that's the most important phase that exists. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're here to do, is understand our audience, understand what their challenge is, and try and help them. But once you get to the ideate phase, you might realize you might be brainstorming on the right problem. So you've got to go back and you've got to talk to your audience to make sure that you're aligned. Or once you get to the test phase, you might realize from your learners that actually that's not the right problem, and you may not even have the right idea, so you've got to go back, and that's fine. That's the whole purpose of this, to try quickly, to fail fast, fail forward, to get to that quick solution. At the end of the day, this entire end-to-end process should really only take about 3 to 4 weeks. I have seen it take longer, it can take shorter, but on average, it's estimated around 3 to 4 weeks. So this is quick, this is iterative. Get in, understand the problem, ideate, come up with a solution, test it. Didn't work? No problem. Go back, test again. Continue until you're solving that problem. Additionally, when you look at this, the 5 phases, you're probably thinking, I already do some of those. Of course, when I have ideas, I test them out. Or if there are problems, I define a problem statement. And that's great. You're on the right track. But the methodology works much like a hive, in that each individual piece plays a key role. No one is greater than the other, but it's all of them working together that make the hive one of the strongest structures. So think of it this way as well. In your kitchen, you might have some coconut flour or bananas or eggs. And individually, these are fine ingredients, and you can find some sort of use for them individually, of course. But when you put them together, you actually make something much better. In this case, pancakes, which you can actually make from those 3 ingredients. And as Aristotle said, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And in this case, it's the truth, both with the pancakes and design thinking. The 5 phases working together as a whole in that iterative process are what make design thinking so powerful. So how do you know when to apply design thinking? This is a question I get a lot. People get excited when they learn about it and they think, okay, I can use this for everything. And that's not the case. You don't want to use this for everything because it's not applicable. So here are some questions that you can ask yourself to help uncover, is design thinking appropriate, or is a more linear, iterative problem-solving methodology appropriate? So first is the problem human-centered? Are there humans involved? Is it around humans? Is it based on humans? If the answer is yes, then design thinking may be the answer. Do you have a clear understanding of the problem? If you don't, or if you're having problems on aligning to what the actual issue is, you know there's a challenge, but you don't know truly what that problem is, design thinking may be the answer. And is the problem fairly complex? Because if it is, then design thinking may also be the answer. So I've said the terminology problem-solving methodology several times so far, and you might be thinking at this point, well, what's the difference between this and all the others that exist? Because there are a number of them out there. Is design thinking just the latest and greatest buzzword of the industry and it's going to fade out in a couple of years? All good questions. So the first is design thinking itself is not new. It's actually been around since the 60s. It got a lot more traction in the early 2000s thanks to Apple, which directly related their product design success to design thinking. Additionally, a design company by the name of IDEO, which many of you may have heard about by now, formed and started to get a lot of industry recognition as well in the early 2000s. Additionally, Stanford University believed so much in this methodology that they created the D School, which is the design school based on this methodology. So those three ingredients combined are really what have catapulted design thinking in the past 15, 20 years to being the industry standard and the terminology that it's getting now. And so I share all that to say design thinking is not going anywhere. And in fact, as our business problems and challenges continue to increase and become more complex, we're going to continue to find that design thinking is a solution that can help us through those. So as far as problem-solving methodology, there are a number out there that exist. So there's Lean, there's Agile, there's PDCA, and they're all strong methodologies, and they all work. The difference with design thinking is that these three methodologies start after you have the problem identified, and they take you through to solving those problems, whereas design thinking starts before that. It helps you uncover the problem and then leads you through problem solving. So in summary, the difference is design thinking starts with problem finding and then leads you to problem solving. So who can use design thinking? Anyone, everyone, any industry, any line of business. There's this misconception that thanks to Apple and the fact that it's helped them with their products, and of course IDEO, who's focused on products, the design thinking typically is for product design, and that's not the case. As I mentioned earlier, design thinking can be used for services, it can be used for processes, and again, it can be used in any industry, any line of business. So here's just some examples of big proponents of design thinking. In fact, let's drill down into a number of these and talk about them in practice. So for example, Airbnb founders attribute their initial success to design thinking. So at the beginning, they were so focused on the coding of their platform that they failed to take into account what customers actually wanted, which was great photography of the rentals that they were viewing. And so as Airbnb started to fold, they used design thinking to uncover that's what customers wanted, and the founders actually went out and started taking the pictures themselves in New York as they were getting established to make sure that they were giving customers what they needed. Airbnb also uncovered through design thinking that their learners, their employees like the idea of experience. And so they want to change, and they have changed actually, their chief HR function into the chief employee experience officer function, recognizing that experience is essential in the workplace, especially among millennials. LinkedIn recently had a 6-week program with over 1,000 participants from other Silicon Valley companies, and that purpose was just looking at low engagement scores and trying to figure out what the issues were and how they could help solve them as a cohesive group. Citrix originally was using design thinking in their product organization, but after they realized the success of it, they started launching it through other areas of their organization, recognizing that it's not a one-time event, but it's a cultural shift. And Telstra used design thinking to help them enhance their new employee onboarding experience. They were having trouble with the difficulty and the complexity of getting new hires on board and through the process. And so design thinking helped them minimize that complexity and improve the efficiency of the onboarding experience. Bank of America, in 2007, Bank of America launched a design thinking initiative to uncover what else could they be doing to help customers. And through that initiative, they uncovered that customers really want help saving more money. And so through their brainstorming, Bank of America came up with the program Keep the Change, which rounds up on every debit card purchase and automatically puts it into a savings account. And as a result, over 12 million customers have enrolled and over $2 billion have been saved through this program, bringing a great value to both the customers and the business itself. IBM wanted to reimagine their trade show experience. So they were frustrated with the fact that they were one of 1,000 vendors that were going to these trade shows, and they wanted to figure out how do they set themselves apart from the other vendors. What are customers actually wanting and needing from the trade show? And through design thinking, they uncovered that it's the need for that human interaction, and so that there could be a collaborative experience rather than just a straightforward transaction experience. And as a result, they've seen double-digit increase in client engagement leads, lead capture, and revenue. And Ben Roth, Creative Services VP, says, we're seeing more engagements, we're also seeing more revenue generation results, and we're having better transactions. And Suncorp used design thinking to help them through their merger integration. So they had bought a second company and they were merging them together. And their concern was, we have two highly sufficient organizations, and we want to make sure that we can merge them, but without losing the momentum of each business unit. And so through design thinking, they uncovered the need to use the design tools of visualization, metaphor, storytelling to help have strategic conversations to build that alignment and buy-in on the strategy and vision of their integration. And as a result, 94% of employees felt they understood the vision after the design thinking initiative compared to 48% prior. So for any of you who have been through a merger or a strategic deployment, you understand the importance of getting that buy-in of everyone to align rather than just being told what our new value system is or what our new strategy or vision is. So design thinking is a great tool to use in that example. By far, my favorite is General Electric. So Doug Dietz is a designer with GE, and he was tasked with redesigning the MR experience. And so this is what he had to work with. And some of you may be familiar with this. When you look at it, it looks old, it looks archaic, it looks like it's going to swallow you and you're not going to come out. It's not inviting as a patient. And so Doug spent 2 years redesigning this machine, and this is what he came up with. And it looks better. I think we can all agree. It's sleek, it looks more modern, it's more inviting. And so Doug was really excited about this. And so he started traveling around to the hospitals and facilities where it was being installed to see firsthand the user experience. And on one of his early visits, he was following a 6-year-old patient and his parents down a hallway for the little boy to have his first MR experience. And as the boy got closer to the room, he started to get nervous and scared. He started to cry. His parents tried to calm him down, but it's already in a stressful situation, and so they're not really able to get control over their little boy. And by the time he got into the room, he was so hysterical that he actually had to be sedated. In fact, 80% of all children that use MR scanners have to be sedated. So when Doug witnessed this firsthand, he realized that he had failed. He failed because when he designed this machine, he designed it from his perspective, from an adult's perspective, certainly not from a patient, and definitely not from a patient that was a child. So he accepted this challenge, and he went back to the drawing board to redesign, to reimagine this MR scanner, but this time he employed design thinking. And in that empathy phase, he included children, parents, doctors, designers, to help him uncover what it is that they actually need. And through that initiative, he identified that patients like the idea of experiences. They want to be transported to someplace else because this is a stressful situation that they're in. So what they came up with was the idea of an MR experience. For example, a rocket ship that takes you into outer space, or a pirate ship like this that can sail you around the island. And in fact, they were so keen on details that they even included a pina colada air freshener in this specific room to give it that island feel. And it turns out that that solved a latent need for the parents, because the parents would then report out they actually felt calmer because that pina colada smell reminded them of being on vacation on a beach drinking pina coladas. So in the first 3 months, the child sedation rate dropped below 8%. And so at this point, Doug felt successful. But what he learned from this experience was the importance of using design thinking, the importance of the empathy phase of bringing in your end users, your learners, your audience, your patients up front to understand what they truly need before spending 2 years designing a solution, only to find out that it actually didn't meet the needs of your end users. So with that, I've talked a bit about some ways that other companies use design thinking. So I want to take a moment and talk about how we can apply it in the L&D space. So these are just 6 examples of the ways that it can be applied. So the first one, organizational design. For those of you that focus on org design, you can use design thinking to help you restructure roles or the organization itself. Employee engagement, which is significantly an important topic. So research has shown that by using design thinking to help you make work easier, efficient, more fulfilling, or more rewarding, that can have a positive impact on the employee engagement scores or learning. So design thinking can help you ensure that you're putting the learner experience at the forefront of all of the learning solutions that we're designing. Experiences in general can be defined, created, or optimized through design thinking. So think about brand, experience, customer, user, employee, or the learner. Recruitment, where of course the focus should remain on the candidate and their journey, design thinking can help streamline the sourcing, the hiring, and the onboarding experience, just like with Telstra. And lastly, digital solutions. So design thinking can be used to help develop, uncover, and design new digital tools that can make work easier and better. So those are just some examples of the way we can apply design thinking in the L&D space. And so now let's take a look at the value of design thinking. It puts people first. This is the most important aspect of design thinking. It's focusing on the people. Anyone can adopt it. It's agnostic. It drives innovation and helps with creative problem solving. It reframes the business problems to ensure that what we're focusing on is truly what our audience, our learners, our customers actually need. And it transforms us from order takers to business partners. And this is so important because it helps us move from being proactive, It helps us move from being reactive to proactive, rather than just taking the orders when someone comes to us and says, I need training to solve this problem, or this is what I need you to design, or this is what I need you to do. It helps us take a step back to make sure that we help them uncover what the issue truly is and help get to that root cause analysis so that we can be better business partners. So if design thinking is so great, why aren't we using it more? Well, first, it's risky. It's disruptive to the processes, and there's so many unknowns. This isn't a bad thing. This is actually a good thing. In order for us to progress, evolve, meet, and exceed the changing challenges that we have in the business area, we need to be disruptive to processes. But where people get caught up is they get afraid that they're going to uncover something that they didn't know exists, or something that's going to change their approach or their business directional. And that's okay. That's the whole purpose of design thinking. Lack of leadership buy-in. So this tends to come because leaders don't understand the value of design thinking. They don't understand how it can be applied. They tend to get hung up that it's so heavily based on products. And that's where we need to come in as design thinking practitioners to really help educate and communicate that design thinking can be used in any industry, any line of business, and it's much greater than being used for products. It stops at theory. I hear a lot, I get it, I read an article, I watched a webinar, I know the 5 phases, but knowing them is not enough. You've got to move from theory to application and get out there and actually apply it. And that's what today's session is really talking about, helping you understand the ways that it can be used, the ways that it's currently used, and the value. Some people think of design thinking as a one-time event. I'll talk to customers or clients and they'll say, yeah, we tried it once and it was nice, but that's not enough. Design thinking isn't a one-time event. It's a culture shift. It's a mind shift. It's a transformative journey. There's change management associated to it. As much as I would love to say that each of us individually can drive design thinking and be the power behind it, that's not the case. It takes a team. It takes a culture shift for everyone to get in line to understand the way the 5 phases work, using them together so that you have the same terminology, the same vernacular, and we're all working to the same goal. And lastly, the name. And this is one that I even struggle with. The name is a bit of a misnomer. So let's take a look at it. Design thinking. We'll break it down. Design. When people hear design, like myself, initially when I first started learning about it, my first thought was, well, I'm not a designer. I'm not a creative, so this is not for me. It actually scares me because I'm not creative. And that's not the case here. The reason that is named, the first name word comes from design, is because the tools that we use come from designers. And that's really how design thinking began, but you do not have to be a designer. You don't have to be creative. And the second part is thinking. People say, I don't want a thinking methodology, I want a doing methodology. And I have to laugh when I hear that, because if you understand design thinking, yeah, you're thinking, maybe you're ideating, that's where you're thinking, but it's all about doing. It's all about action, getting out there, understanding what your learners' challenges are, helping them uncover the problem, brainstorming, coming up with ideas, creating, bringing those ideas to life, testing them, and then implementing them, getting it to work to solve that business problem. Nothing in there is really just a thinking. Design thinking is all about action. And so the reality is, it's important for all of us to be aware of that and to talk about that so that we can help break through that misconception about design thinking being just for creatives and not being actionable. And at the end of the day, what's in a name? And so I share this because you've probably heard user experience or experience design or systems thinking. You've probably heard all these at one point. And as you're on your journey of design thinking practitioner, a lot of questions I get is, what's the difference? And at the end of the day, we are all trying to solve for one thing, and that's the human. And we are all looking to create human-centered solutions, products, services. And at the core of this, the framework is that this is all human-centered design. And so there's a lot of cross-pollination with those other 6 areas. They're doing the same thing. They're trying to solve problems based on that human. And so I share this to say, if you're getting caught up with the idea of design thinking, or you're in a conversation and other people are getting caught up with it, just use human-centered design. To me, that is a very clear depiction of what it is that we're doing, and a great way to describe what it is. And it really helps to break through that barrier of design being for creatives and thinking not being actionable. So I've talked a bit about the companies using it, what it is, how it can be applied, and that's all great. But really, what we need to focus on is getting past that and breaking through and just going out and actually applying it yourself. And there's no better way to learn and get familiar with the phases than to actually do it yourself. So what I've put together are 5 design thinking ideas about ways that you could go back and actually apply this in your business unit or with your business partners or in any other group. So the first one is improving the employee experience and engagement. This is a great topic and use case for design thinking. Or if you're in HR or you're in recruitment, how might we attract and retain new talent? How might we redesign the employee reward system in a way that's meaningful to employees? Again, focusing on the employees. How might we improve the learner experience? This is probably the one that I focus a lot on in the L&D space with my customers and my clients, because so often in the training industry, we create learning based on our own ideas, what we think is right. And you'd be amazed at how many times we use design thinking, we go out and we learn from the audience that, yes, what we were thinking is right in some capacity, but there's this whole other area of challenges that our learners are having that we're not addressing because we're not thinking about it from their perspective. So design thinking is a great tool for the learner experience. And then I also use it when I have conversations with clients or customers around how might we create a culture that empowers creativity, collaboration, and innovation. And those are 3 really powerful words, but you'll find that a lot of people you talk with have different meanings for those words, different understandings. And through design thinking, you can uncover what they mean behind it, what they need, and how you can actually create an environment that's going to cultivate that and empower them to have that innovation. Now, those are, I would say those are pretty lofty ideas, and especially if you're just getting started in design thinking, it could be a little challenging for you to leave today and go back and and try and just start to apply one of those in an initiative or a project. So I wanted to also share with you just 5 skill building ideas. These are fairly basic ideas in which you can apply design thinking to help you get comfortable with those 5 phases, to really see how they work together. Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing for you, is to get comfortable with this. You can take a class and you can read as much as you want, but until you actually get out there and do it, it's not going to feel like it's your own. So these are just 5 different ideas. Reimagine a wallet. So you can do this by yourself. You can get a small group together, 3 or 4 people. In fact, these 5 examples could be done in a half day, or you could take a couple of days, however you want to do it. There's no right or wrong way here, but they're just examples for you to go out and try. So if you think about a wallet, it's cumbersome. I find them frustrating. I'm either losing them, or they don't fit in my pocket, or from a design perspective, I just don't like it. And so if you take a step back and use design thinking to reimagine the wallet, what might you uncover? So get a couple people, go out and interview them as part of that empathy phase. What you might uncover is, why do we even have wallets anymore? So when you look at this, when you finish this initiative, you might not be leaving with a better functioning wallet. You might actually uncover it's not a wallet that we need to be solving for, because that's not the underlying problem that we're having. The problem that we're having could be all of the stuff that we have in our wallet should be electronic. Why do I have to carry around a driver's license that it's a printed, laminated object? Why can't I have electronic version, since everything is virtually going that direction anyway? So just kind of something to think about to paint that broader picture of how design thinking could apply to that example. Reimagine team collaboration. So the way that you work with your team. Maybe you were told, hey, you need to use SharePoint, or you need to use Yammer, or this is the way that we do it. I get frustrated with hearing this is the way that we do it, because we're told. Why? Because the person before them was told, and the person before them was told. Well, how about we take a step back and we just reimagine it? Let's examine it. Let's get some team members together and let's uncover, what do we actually need from a team collaboration standpoint? Is it even this electronic site? Is it we need better communication skills? Who knows what you're going to uncover? Be a better business partner. This is one of my favorite. This is actually one that I get asked a lot about, especially in HR, with working with clients. They want to be better business partners. And starting off at something as lofty as HR can be a pretty daunting task, so start smaller. Think about the way you work with your own team. How could you be a better business partner to your team? How could you be a better team member? What about fostering innovation? Again, goes back to what I was sharing earlier, in that innovation has a different context and different meaning to the individuals different people that you talk to. And so maybe you want to look at, how might we create an innovative environment, or just an innovation opportunity within your small team. And lastly, this is kind of an easy one, but one that I think people have the most fun with. Pick your favorite product, whatever it is, food, a drink, technology, a piece of clothing, and reimagine it. Interview a couple of people about the idea of that product. Find out, why do they use it? Get to that root cause of it and see, could you reimagine it? Is there something else that could be done with it that you could make it even better? And so within these 5 phases, I hope that today's session has been valuable for you, in the sense that you have a greater understanding of how design thinking can work for you. And of course, this is only 30 minutes on this topic, and I could converse about it for a few days. So please continue your learning journey as a design thinking practitioner. But most importantly, get out there and apply your learning on an idea, on one of these basic skill building ideas, or if you're comfortable, one of the other 5 that I talked about, just so you can get comfortable with the entire process. Because at the end of the day, there is no greater way to learn, especially with this methodology, than doing it for yourself. So now let's go ahead and open it up. Actually, nope, forgot about the lessons learned. All right, so quick lessons learned I want to share with you. So there are 4 here. The first one is, dedicate resources to see the initiative through. So one of the challenges that I hear about design thinking, when people say, yeah, I started it, I didn't finish it, and that's typically because of lack of resources. You don't have to have full-time resources. They can be part-time. But really what you want to make sure is that you have ownership and accountability for who's going to help continue to move your project along. So as I mentioned earlier, projects should, on average, take 3 to 4 weeks. I have seen them take longer, several months. I've seen them take shorter. The challenge with the several months project is that we're evolving so quickly, and business challenges evolve so quickly that if you started an initiative and you interviewed people in January and now it's July and August and you're just getting out there for prototyping, it could be that those business problems have already evolved into something else and you may need to go back and start over again. Allow time and resources to plan for your empathy interviews. Empathy is the most important aspect of design thinking. And I can't stress enough that the empathy process, the interviews, is so critical. I actually plan about a week of prep time before my interviews themselves. And in that week, my team and I are working together on defining, just brainstorming the questions that we want to ask, making sure we don't have leading questions. We don't have yes-no questions. Making sure that we've got thought-provoking, open-ended dialogue type active questions. And then after we've got them, we create themes to make sure that they're logically, they flow together. Then we rehearse and practice them among ourselves. And then we actually go out and pilot them with strangers to make sure that we're comfortable with those questions. So by the time we get to our interviews, that we have a good, smooth flow through those questions. Take notes on the experience of the interviews, not just the interview time itself. So, for example, when I am interviewing clients, let's say the interview is a 1 hour time frame from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. I actually get there at 12, and I just start observing. I spend about that first hour observing different people, the way they're working, things that I see in the office or in the environment, and I just take notes on all of that. And additionally, after the interview, I take notes on that as well. And I have found that that really helps me create and identify the user personas and understand their environment and sometimes their situation even better. And if you can, have a second person there with you to actually take the notes so that you can focus on just having the conversation rather than having the conversation, make sure you're writing it down and having those sometimes long lulls or pauses. Having a second person there who can take that notes can really help your communication flow. And lastly, create a place to continue fostering design thinking. So there's two options here that I would recommend. One, you could create something like an innovation kitchen where you have a reoccurring virtual or physical meeting space where you're getting together and you're talking about business challenges, you're ideating, you're prototyping, you're testing, you're failing fast, you're going back and you're trying again. It's really that space where you have that creative freedom to try and to fail without being judged. A second option is join a community of practice where you can meet with like-minded individuals and other companies, lines of businesses, roles, where they too are applying design thinking or where they're learning about design thinking. In fact, I lead a community of practice on design thinking with GP Strategies, and I'll be inviting all of you to join that community of practice starting in Q1 of next year. So look for that information to come out at a later date. And so now let's go ahead and open up for some Q&A.
Great. Thanks, Keith. That was a lot we just covered in less than 40 minutes, and so I do want to take some time to cover these questions that are coming in. Before I do so, though, as a reminder, if you have a question, please enter it into the Q&A module at this time. And since a lot was covered and there's obviously a lot more that we can discuss, we do encourage that you continue the conversation with Keith beyond today's session. As you can see, his contact info is right here in this slide. We'll also be sending everyone a link to a blog post where he'll be addressing some of the key takeaways from today and answering any questions that we don't get to. And also, the recording from today will be emailed to the email address that you provided when you registered. So we didn't spend a lot of time on this last slide, but someone did ask if you could go back to the slide that showed the 5 phases, just so we can have that up for this part of the discussion. Yep, there we go. And while you're doing that,
just in general, the 5 phases?
Yeah, and can you
Okay.
review the phases really quick? Just a once over.
Sure. So empathy, where you're defining, or rather you're learning about the audience. So that's where you're going out, you're talking, you're really understanding the audience. Then once you understand what their challenge is, so for example, you're not approaching it with a direct question. So I'll give you an example. If you let's take a look at learner experience. When I am focusing on this, I don't go out and ask, hey, do you like the learning that you're taking? What's your learner experience like? Instead, they are broad range questions so that I can learn a great deal about the audience. So for example, I'll ask them, when you buy a new TV and you have to hang it on the wall, how do you learn how to hang it on the wall? Tell me what a great learning experience is like. Tell me the last time that you learned something and it was memorable. How did it make you feel? What were the steps that you went through? And so it's just a broad range of questions so that you can truly develop a big picture understanding of what their challenge actually is that you're helping them uncover. And so through that, then you define, you take all that information back and then you define the problem statement based on what you've learned. And then once you have your problem statement, then of course you're going to try and come up with solutions for that. So you just start brainstorming, write down different problem ideas that you have to solve that problem. And then once you work back with your team, figure out a couple that you think may be viable. You could even go back at that point to your audience and say, hey, I think this is what I heard from your problem statement. Is this right? Does this seem to meet what you think the challenge is? Once you get agreement, then you can create those quick prototypes. And that can be just a drawing. It can be a sketch. You don't want something that's high fidelity that takes time and money to build, because what if it's the wrong one? You spent all that money and time on defining the wrong solution. So usually we just draw a picture. Once they kind of get the buy-in and they say, yes, you're on the right track, then we'll move forward and we'll create something stronger. Then, of course, we test that, we get their feedback, make sure we're on the right track. So that's just a quick summary of the 5 stages.
Perfect. And then that'll lead us into the next question, which is, do you have any detailed use cases that you can share that help break down the 5 phases?
Absolutely. So it's a 2-part answer. The first answer is, in the next community of practice session, I will be sharing a detailed use case that I've recently been working on with a Fortune 100 company. It's a global auto manufacturer, and we'll be talking about the learner experience, and I'll walk through in key detail the 5 phases of what we did and each outcome. In the meantime, so you don't have to wait that long, there's a book that I really recommend. Now, I know I don't normally promote other materials, but this is one of the most valuable tools, I think, as a design thinking practitioner that I recommend you reading. And it's called Solving Problems with Design Thinking. So if you can put that into the chat window for everyone, it's by Gene Litka. And again, it's Solving Problems with Design Thinking, 10 Stories of What Works. And what I love is it's 10 use cases, and it breaks it down as to what they did in each of these use cases in different industries and how they applied design thinking. In fact, a couple of them I pulled from today, IBM and Suncorp.
Okay, I think I shared that. Sorry, I had to do that quickly. I think I just shared that with everyone. If you don't see it, oh, wait, no, sorry, Keith, I sent that to just you, not everyone. I will, when he's answering the next question, I will make sure to put that in the chat field. Sorry about that. So, you know, as another focus right now is along the lines of data, and we hear about data all the time. It's you know, whether it's big data or analytics or how we're talking about it, data is the core of so many learning initiatives. And so do you have any tips for blending design thinking into analytics?
Good question. And I know in 2 minutes I'm not going to be able to get to all of that. So what I would ask is if we could pause on that question, because I just don't want to give you a 30-second answer. It's not sufficient. So I will specifically add that as a topic to our community of practice session.
Fair enough. Okay, so let me go back down to these other questions. Let's see here. There are a lot coming in. Can you talk a little bit about integrating design thinking with certain models like ADDIE, SAM, Waterfall, and how it relates to the PM process?
Absolutely. So the first is, and that's a great question because it's not necessarily different. I find that I will use depending on the project itself. So if I'm using Addy for designing content, I will pull pieces of design thinking out. So the short answer is it's not an and or other. I will pull, for example, empathy, which I don't feel that Addy really has a strong emphasis on that, because I find that typically when I'm using problem PMing, they're coming to me with the problem already. And that's where design thinking helps us say, okay, let's take a step back and make sure that we're solving the right problem and that we truly understand what the challenge is. And so I guess what I'm saying is I pull from the design thinking toolbox, for example, empathy. So go back and I focus on empathy to make sure that we're solving the right problem. So the short answer is I blend the two by pulling the different phases of design thinking and mixing it in.
And we're just about at 45 minutes. I'll go ahead and we'll take one more. Keep those questions coming in. I'll leave this open for a few minutes after we end the session just to make sure we get everyone's questions. And as Keith mentioned, we'll be following up on our blog to address most of these. I think this is a good one to close out with. How futuristic is design thinking, and how do you build anticipation in the design?
Interesting. My hesitation is around the alignment and understanding of the word future. So for me, design thinking is as futuristic as the team that's using it, in the sense that the methodology is fairly basic. But if we are ideating and we are forward thinking and we're bringing those new ideas, then that's where that futuristic standpoint is going to come in. So I share that to say design thinking started in the 60s. Of course, everything has evolved. Everything's a broad statement, but I'm going to make it anyway. We have evolved significantly since the 60s, especially in the business industry. But those 5 phases are still the same 5 phases there. And so I share that to say design thinking evolves with us. It evolves with the business challenges because it's so heavily based on the solutions that we bring to it. Design thinking itself isn't going to give us some magical answer. It's just a framework that helps us uncover what the problem is, helps us think about different ways of solving that problem, and having us do quick iterative solutions. And so my short answer would be, for me personally, I believe design thinking is evolutionary as much as we help it to evolve.
Great. Well, we do have questions still coming in, but again, we'll be addressing them in the blog post. Keith, go ahead and flip it to that last slide so folks can see your contact info again. I do want to say thank you to today's speaker, and thank you to everyone who attended for your time and attention. We do hope that you'll join us again for future webinars. Registration for upcoming sessions, as well as all of our on-demand downloads, are available at gpstrategies.com under webinars. I wish everyone on the call a wonderful and productive rest of your day. Thank you.